Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. Welcome to today's webinar on increasing paint sales with X-Rite's MetaVue. We have a couple of our technical support specialists here today. Tim O'Rourke will be presenting on some tips and tricks to use with your MetaVue, and Jason Hedgecock is also available to help answer your questions. I'm Robert Grotans, the Global Technical Marketing Manager, and I'll also be moderating today's webinar. A few things to go over before we get started. Due to the number of people that are attending today's webinar, we'll keep everyone muted. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please use the questions function on the GoToWebinar panel. We will be monitoring today's questions and we can answer them at the end of the webinar. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a link so that you can review it at your convenience. With that, I'll turn it over to Tim to kick things off.
Thanks, Robert. Again, Jason and I really appreciate everybody coming to the webinar this morning. We certainly want to get word out on the new MetaVue, but we also want to make sure we show you some tips and tricks on how to use it, and then also some of the tips and tricks inside of Color Designer Plus. So hopefully we can get not too long, but we appreciate everybody joining in. Certainly ask questions today over to the right, like Robert said, is a panel where you can ask questions, and we hopefully answer those as we go through the webinar, and then we'll also probably answer them if we have time here in the webinar ourselves. So with that being said, what we want to do is kind of go over the MetaVue, and I want to walk through, first of all, how to use it, or basically the calibration and cleaning of the MetaVue for those of you that have it. We have had the instrument out for over a year now, and we've had great success. I can say in my 24 years with X-Rite, we've got a real winner with the MetaVue instrument. And that's just being selfish because of phone calls and support and all of that. But from a technical side, it really does the job, and we'll show you some of the samples and how it works getting you there. So first thing with the instrument, and I'm going to jump around some of the screens, and I've got webcams and things like that. But the first thing I want to talk about is the calibration. Is with the instrument. This is our new Color Designer Plus version 3.6. That's our newest version. The MetaVue, if you have it, you were given version 3.5. We've upgraded that version, and I'll show you a couple features there. But the first thing with the instrument is the calibration. And with that, you're going to calibrate every day. There's an indicator light on the instrument, as you've seen. It's a red light, meaning it needs calibration. Green light is that it's calibrated and ready to go. This happens on a 24-hour basis. We can set the software up to calibrate when you want it to. So again, features inside there. But again, this is those of you that have it. I want to make sure I talk and walk through some of the features inside. So with Color Designer Plus, we go down to the bottom left. There's the different settings and things there. And we can go to Calibrate Instrument. That initializes the instrument. A couple of things here. We've got videos in place inside the software that show you cleaning instructions. Just like our old instruments, the iView or any of those, cleaning is just as important as anything else with the instrument. And I'll talk and walk through some of that here. But there's videos also now on how to calibrate. The instrument has a rail system that shows you both the calibration plaque and then the targeting square. And in order to do that, you'll notice right now, I can't really do anything until that calibration plaque is in place. And so with the MetaVue, we have the image there, so you can actually see me start to pull the calibration plaque into place. From there, once we've got it, put it into the proper detent, you'll see the measure button. If I'm not at full screen, or if I'm not in the right position, the measure button will never appear, and thus you will not be able to calibrate or measure. And so with that, you can actually see in this diagram, or in mine, there's little spots on there, and that's indication that I probably should clean that because there are spots. But as I go forward, I'm now locked into place, and I can click on Measure. The system now goes through and measures the calibration plaque. If you have the MetaVue, on that calibration plaque, there is a little hole, and it's an indicator for the lenses and everything to see that the calibration plaque is in place. For some reason, if you covered up that little hole on the left, bottom left, it wouldn't calibrate. But that's why it's important. Again, we'll talk about cleaning right after this. So the first part, it cleans it, the calibration plaque is slid into place. The second calibration is the targeting square. Same thing, if I'm not in place, and the way that it indicates and says that it is in place, and I'm going to just kind of switch over here. Bear with me for a second. I'm going to go over to my camera, and I'm going to kind of show you what really is happening. As you'll see, of course, there's a light on, and I'm going to kind of pick this up a little bit, and we'll see if it focuses in. Over to the left and right there are little tabs, and I call them the east-west tabs. It is crucial that those two tabs stay clean, meaning, let me grab a pen here. Right now, it wants to calibrate, and you can see if I switch over, back over to the Color Designer Plus, you'll see it's ready to measure. Now I'm going to go back again to the camera, and if I were to have a little spot inside that where that's covered up, that little east and west tabs, oops, here we go, sorry. If I were to cover those, or those got a little bit of speck of paint, you would not calibrate. So we've had the instrument out for a year, and this is the type of thing that we're seeing that can cause an issue. So keep the instrument clean. I'll show you, I'll measure and finalize the calibration. You receive the gray mat with that, okay? That's not a new mouse pad. That's what we want the instrument to sit on. It now gives us a neutral gray background that you can place the samples underneath if need be. That's what that's for. So now I'm fully calibrated. I'm going to hit close, and I'm going to go back to the camera a minute and just kind of finish off what we can do with this as far as cleaning goes. So with the instrument, I can flip it over. If I slide, sorry about that, I can slide the calibration plaque all the way inside the instrument, and now that allows me to see the 4 lenses here, okay? And that means cleaning them, I can look and see, you know, how much dirt. So you want to clean these 4 lenses and make sure those are clean. So some of the things we've learned with the iView where we wanted you to clean the lenses, we now have made it easy for you to get to those and clean. So just like that, we also want you to clean the calibration plaque in that. So great stuff there. One last thing I'll show you in Color Designer Plus is the instrument has the capability, and all of our instruments do, whether it's the iView, the CI4100, the CF57, we can go and look at what we call the measure XYZs. So what we can do is look at the calibration plaque. I slide the calibration plaque forward. Those values are stored in the instrument. And so what I do is I measure the calibration plaque, and that gives me a difference between what's stored in the instrument versus what I read now. And if those numbers are way off, that helps us troubleshoot things that need to happen. In this case here, my DE is what I look at. It says 0.03. Well, the reason why is I just calibrate it. So those are the kind of things that every day you calibrate, but if middle of the day, you know, something happens, or what does a fingerprint do to this instrument? You know, those are things we can look at and use that as a tool sometimes to troubleshoot your instruments not matching very well. If you called us, we might walk you through this type of thing. But the bottom line is, when you're using the software, we want the MetaVue, because now it's using imaging to do it, right around 0.15, where other instrumentation, because it is there's not an image camera or anything like that, we want that under 0.08, okay? So we also said we were going to do some poll questions, and let's throw one of those up. I'll have Robert throw up our first one. Is what is it? What instrument? Yeah. What instrument do you presently have? And it helps us. Our fleet of instrumentation goes all the way back to 1996. So hopefully there's none of the old ones. But we've got the CF57, CFS, RM400. So it helps us. Certainly, the software nowadays connects to all of the instrumentation. So that's a nice thing, is you're not having to separate your software for some other instrumentation. Okay, we're all set? Mm-hmm. Good. Looks like a lot of you have MetaVue now. Okay, and then there's some with the iView, and then sprinkled in are some of our old CF57s and that. So the MetaVue, again, hopefully, if I said, you know, raise your hand out, how awesome is the MetaVue? You know, that maybe that's a poll question we'll do next time. But certainly, I hope you've had great success with it. So at this point, what I want to go through is show you some of the things the MetaVue can do. And first of all, I want to talk about its functions when we go into color matching. So right away, it shows us a screen that shows us the image of the soft image of the black mat there. And so we can place samples underneath. Someone brings in a color card. Okay, real simple and easy. I mean, you just slide it underneath there, and as you see, it's got a real image, and we can see the card and the color that we're measuring. What's nice now is no longer are you going to have this issue of, okay, I'll measure and off I go. Well, the old days, guess what? Sample probably didn't match because you weren't paying attention, and now you've got the black print or the printing on the color card, and right away, no, this system, my X-Rite's not working again. So just on a return of investment, you're going to save hundreds of dollars a year just because of seeing the image right away. Oh, I don't want to measure there. I slide the image to where I don't have that problem, and off I go. So, you know, again, how is the MetaVue really helping me out? You know, right there, saves mistints across the board. Users that weren't comfortable with it before now can see the image and be able to formulate to the paint lines they carry. So I'm going to walk through this. A couple of quick things as we go. Auto base. We don't have to even worry about daylight anymore. If you've ever been in my webinars, I've talked about using daylight for all color measurement. We've got a setting in the software that does it automatically. And so in this case here, you can see the daylight. I've got my formula. We've got our save to the formula, our customer files, print, dispense. Again, functions that we've had in place for many years, and we just keep improving a lot of these. So again, real simple and easy. I'll go back to the measure screen here. And again, it allows me just to do samples, color cards. Again, being able to see what I'm actually measuring is huge. So where that's nice is now let's get into samples where customers are bringing in odd shapes, things we couldn't do before. Okay, here's a piece of stucco. You know, this is what your instrument sees. So if you have the iView or you have the RM400 or any of our other instruments, that doesn't have a camera, and all it's doing is shining light on the object. The light reflects back into the instrument. We then take that color and measure it and try to formulate. And so in this case, it doesn't matter what I do with this sample, those black holes, those the shadowing, all of that is part of the sample. So with the old days of the iView, you'd measure it, and those black holes are going to be part of it. That's why stucco and texture and things are so difficult with the old technology of a light hitting the object. It only fills the void, but I still get samples that come back dark. In this case here, I can measure the sample. So I'm going to measure this. And what this instrument does now, the MetaVue, is it pulls the image out, separates all the color from the shadowing and pits and valleys, and lets me measure only the color that it sees. And that's called what's called Smart Spot. The instrument has that technology. You'll notice I can then go from there, formulate to what I want. And now, get that color. And this was where the amazing part of the instrument came into play. Once I started formulating these and I took these to the store and started mixing them up, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago when we started the project, this is the kind of stuff, and I'm going to switch back over to the camera. Let's see here, camera. And start to show you, this was the world. Again, the camera's a little bit. And so, that was an example of, okay, wow, that really worked well. Now let's start going after other things. And these are typical samples that are being brought in. So if I go back to the measure screen and I say, okay, now what about something like this? Here was the sample. I said, okay, this will never work. One, it's a tangled, it's really a sponge is what it is, a soap sponge. But from here, you can see that this instrument sees all kinds of different things going on. But what I want to make sure I show is, or talk about is, some customers would take it, being able to size down the aperture, and they may try to go after that. Because of the smart spot, I will tell you probably 90% of the time, measure in the full large aperture. The reason I say that is smart spot only works with the largest setting aperture. Once I change the size of this, we are now just looking at color. So it would include all these holes and everything else. So leave it on smart spot, measure the sample, slide underneath there. If it's a case where it doesn't separate out, because now it sees the dark blues, those holes, what looks like color to it, and now separates it out. So there's dark blues, there's a shadowed blue there, but here's the blue that I want. And customers at this point say, well, how do I know which one it is? Well, right now it's kind of like, look at what what are you seeing on screen in the sample. I know it's this color one. We also show a combine. Here's what the instrument would do if you wanted all of them together. Kind of like, hey, I've got an eye view, and this is about what it would do. So again, I can walk through, formulate this color to what I want, auto base, daylight, and now formulate that color. This is the best part. I mean, a sample like this, and I'm going to back over to my camera. The user itself that was afraid to do anything like this. So, if Mary, the head of the paint department, wasn't in, sorry, you got to wait for Mary to come back before you would ever do this type of sample. Well, now they're not afraid to go, well, I can measure that. So what you're seeing here is over to the right is the sample measurement, or the drawdown of the formula. To the left there, the darker one, that's what the iView did. So I started measuring samples in both MetaVue and iView, because I know the iView can't handle that type of sample with the texture and all of that. So right here, this was a sample this is awesome. You could never do that before. And so we start to play with things like this, where if I show you a bunch of samples and go, okay, here's one, it's a countertop. But because I can separate color out, I can then pull that light brown and be able to formulate just to those specs. And there's some stucco. Again, I've got some samples over here that I'll show you real quick. Like here's one here. This is a piece of fabric. And where this one really is, again, another great function of the software is the old days, if we had to measure this sample, we had to worry about the background of it. Notice my shadows. That was key to why a lot of times the instrument would have the light shine through the sample, and then whatever's on the background of it was part of the color. Today, with this technology, I throw it underneath here. I'm going to just go back to Color Designer Plus. I'm getting pretty good at this switching over. So in this case here, again, this is what the instrument sees. So that little bit of crosshatch or the fabric is part of it. And so here, I can now take that, measure the sample, and separate out the color. If it's a case where it doesn't separate out in what you want, because, well, this color just doesn't pull that yellow out. In this case here, it didn't separate it. Let me measure that again. And so really what it's doing is looking at the pixels and saying, is there enough pixels in there for me to separate the color out? I'm going to just do this one more time. It should. Okay. So it shows the green and the orange. It didn't separate out that yellow. So one of the things I could do is go back to the measure screen and now take my aperture, size it down, and then click on the spot you want to measure. So let's say it was that yellow. So rather than, a lot of people will click and drag over there, you know, they think they have to click and drag, just pick on the spot you want and then click on measure. So we can go down to 2 millimeters. How small is 2 millimeters? Let's say someone brings in, whoops. So again, we got another, what's next? You know, like here, let's, you know, look at these samples here. Someone brings these in, you know, because, oh, it's a paint chip off my wall. Okay, I know that the other units can't do that, so I can grab one of those samples, place it underneath here. Okay, again, if I go back. Yeah. So here in this case, you know, this is, again, the pen tip, you know, that's the size of it. Again, we can see it in there. And so what I suggest with this, because of the smart spot, is just measure the sample, okay? Let it separate if it can. If it does, then the smart spot, any kind of texture, gloss, I shouldn't say gloss, but any type of thing that shows that partiality, perfect. It separated out that little chip, and now I go through and formulate. If it didn't, sure, I can come down here, size it to the size I want. The other thing is, again, that imperfection of that sample. We can now really nail it and go. So lots of features with this instrument. I mean, when you're doing colors, you know, it is just amazing, you know, what we're doing with this. Whoops. So when I come here to a sample like this, you know, it's got lots of colors in it. I can now formulate or pick out the color I want. A lot of times questions are asked. One of the interior design people that was using the instrument, what they'll do with this is, let's say this is the child's bedroom and this is their sheets, balloons. What they'll do is they'll look at it and go, here's the combined color, meaning I wouldn't paint my room any one of these three colors because it would then clash, but I want the combined for that. And so this is the color we can't see with our eyes on what is the combination of all of them. So, you know, great idea there, utilizing that feature to really get colors that you can't. How do I get to the combined one? Now we have that option to do it. Real quick then, as I go and formulate this to my paint line, daylight, I come in here, I go to save it. Let's see if that O'Rourke guy's in there. He's not. Okay, I can come in here, create new customer. You'll notice now if I go and modify details, we've actually saved the image of what we took. Now, you can't go back and reformulate off that image. It's just the saved image. So sometimes I'll even suggest formulate all three colors in case they come back and want that other one. I suspect in the future we'll make our software be able to do that and that type of thing. Okay, so let's another poll question.
So the question is, how often do you turn away a customer because you cannot measure their sample? Daily, weekly, or monthly?
Of course, those of you with the MetaVue now are probably saying never. You know, I mean, again, the instrument's not perfect. I'm not saying that you're not going to have, there's going to be some issues, but all in all, with texture and small sizes, I mean, these small sizes that are coming in, we can nail. But we really feel that this instrument has had that where you don't turn away customers, where before, whether it was because of the operators didn't have faith in it, the reason why they bought the MetaVue is, I would never do stucco. And I live in a region of the country that we do stucco a lot. And so, that was decisions that were made based off the samplings that come in. So. Oh, so about monthly. At least once a month, somebody's turning away a customer. Okay. Yeah. And that's what that's why we developed this instrument, was to do that type of thing. So, what I want to do is, again, I can sit here and measure samples all day and show you the confidence that I have in the instruments. But I want to show you then some other features inside that have been requested. One of the questions we've asked is that has been asked is, how do we do a correction with the MetaVue or with our software, Color Designer Plus? And that's a great question. It's a feature that in the retail, it's not used enough, and it's something that you really need to know how to do. Again, why do colors not match? And if we had the answer to it, we'd make one software and one instrument and never have to worry about it ever again. But because there's so many things connected, dispensers and lighting and all these things are there, color matches sometimes don't work out. And so an example would be, let's say the customer comes in, we've got our sample here, we slide it in, they want this color done it's a Benjamin Moore color, let's say, and they want it done in the Ace paint or your paint. So first of all, most people using the system would go, well, why don't you just go to Fandeck Match and do it there? Again, I'm a believer that what they bring in is what we should match to. Meaning, this card could have sat on someone's windowsill for 2 months and it's faded. And if I just go and use the Fandeck Match, where if I go here to Color Lookup and I say, okay, let's go to Benjamin Moore's color, and I look that up and I formulate this way versus color matching it. Hey, if this is faded and I mix it up, and then take my finger, put it in the paint, or however you visually look at it, hair dryer, that's not going to match because the chip that they brought in is faded different than what these Spandecks are. So I'm a real believer, always do color match if they bring the sample in. And now even more with the MetaVue. So I measure the sample. Again, it's a simple color. I'm not, I don't have to worry about texture or any of that, or even if I did, not a big deal. So from there, I then formulate the color. So let's go to Ace. We then go Eggshell, New Bases. You'll notice here, why isn't the Old Bases button there? I'll show you how we can get rid of that. So I go to New Bases, Gallon, Auto Base, Auto Illuminate doesn't matter because it's daylight anyways. There's my formula, okay? I can save it, okay, if I want to. I'll just do that real quick with the Rourke guy now that he's there. And I've got that information there. But I go and I mix it up, and I find out, in this case here, I'm sitting at the screen of the formulation. If you've got the time, leave it at the formulation screen. There's a correct button down here that you mix it up, you do what you do, and all of a sudden you see that it's lighter. Well, why didn't it work? This machine's been doing great. Okay, well, if I said, let's list the 10 things that can go wrong in a paint shop. Okay, we'd have 100 different things that could go wrong. Your 10 are probably different than my 10. But we want to make sure if it doesn't work, I don't want to just call it an oops paint. It's a beige. I should be able to fix a beige easily. So with that, we go to the correct button because I'm in the screen, and I can just simply take that paint out of the can, hair dry it, put it on a white index card, always best. Don't do it off of the card itself or the finger that you used to smear it on. Do it in a manner that you've got a lot of color. You can then do the large aperture and you measure mist tint. This is now saying, okay, I know what you wanted to do, but here's what happened. And so if I'm in the formulation screen like this, I can simply click on measure mist tint, and it tells me what do you need to add to fix that color? And so in this case here, my sample was lighter, okay? And so what do I need to do? Well, you just need to add a little bit more of the same colorants that were used to get where you need to be. So now if I go to save, and I save this under customer's name, okay, you'll see it shows a correction, what was added. There's my original, there's the correction, and now I can fix that color. If it's a case where I come back a few hours later or a couple days later, and I see that I had saved that, I then could go to my custom color. You'll notice the correct button is there. So I could still correct that button, walk through and go, okay, let's fix that because we need to. The correction is a crucial part of, why don't colors match? Can I fix them? And that's what I really want to say, that, this is as important as just the original one. Sure, we've got the software, we've got the instrument that allows you to see what you're measuring, and that's the kind of thing. This right here, as we said earlier, issues that are going to happen with it. What about an issue like this where, the card has an imperfection in it? That's going to happen, and that's why the MetaVue can certainly take care of a lot of that. Okay, I'm going to walk through a couple things here. How's our time going? Okay, we're right on time. Okay, any questions out there, anything, Jason?
I do have a great question.
Okay.
You preached about cleaning. What do I clean it with?
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I appreciate you listening. Use the alcohol wipes. We send, with the MetaVue or the iVue, we send Bosch and Lomb alcohol wipes, individual packets with each instrument. If you run out of those, you can go to your CVS or your Walgreens and just buy lens wipes. That's what we want to use. Stay away from Sparkle and Windex because they like to use dyes, and those dyes can actually stay on the calibration plaques and the lenses, and we really don't want to have any of that. So use the alcohol wipes. Great question there. Software, I'm going to talk about some of the features for Color Designer Plus, and if we go and utilize the software, go down the bottom left and under settings, that allows us to get into the settings. The password is 1234, unlock. And that gives us a lot of all the features that are in setups inside of the instrument. First one is main options. A lot of times the customers will have full screen, the kiosk mode, that allows you to minimize. Okay, that's about the one feature there. Options, if you're an A store or you carry multiple paint lines, you always want to make sure these are all checked. You don't need to show more, but make sure the others. Otherwise, like an A store, if someone brings a Valspar chip up, you will not be able to cross the paint lines to do that. Okay. Instruments, here's where I now have the MetaVue. I also can prompt for calibration at a specific time. So I click on this and I open the store up at 7, at 6:45, it'll prompt me and say, hey, time for calibration. Do you want to calibrate? And if you click yes, it takes you right to the calibration screen. Averaging, at this time, I have not seen why we would need averaging on. I typically turn it off and leave it because, again, if I'm separating color, it does the job for it. So I haven't seen anything where I needed averaging. Especially the old days, we'd say turn averaging on because if I had a piece of stucco, yeah, I'd want to rotate as often, at minimum 3 times to average that, okay? Dispenser, here's where I can set up and put in different dispenser settings. I can save up to 8 different ones. Underneath the settings, enable tab, underneath the settings, I can select my brand, my connection protocol. If it's connected up to a network, I can share the file path. And these are all the things now where before you might have just had a cable that connected from the back of one computer to another. These are the type of things that if you're switching over from one computer to another, like you're getting a new system, go in and what I say is go look at the instrument. What instrument do you have? What's your dispenser settings? And what's your printing? Those three things are really, when you call us and say, oh, I don't know, I lost all my settings, write those down. That helps us to be able to just jump right on line or tell you what to click and off you go. Same with customer files. Make sure you back those up. It's crucial. We can save you all day long on software and everything else, but I can't help you with customer files if you don't have a backup. One of the last things I want to talk about is two things. One is data management. You'll notice that when I was doing color lookup, here's the formula books that I have. Now there's all kinds of other ones that are associated, but these are the only ones I carry, and they're in an order that I like, okay? And so what does that mean? Well, if I go to settings again, and underneath data management, here in this case, I'll scroll back up top. My color collections, these are your formula books, meaning someone grabs a chip off your rack, they want the medallion color and the medallion paint. There's a formula book for that. That's the way you want to go. So if someone brings an ACE color, wants an ACE paint, we want to make sure you go via the formula book. So we can line these up. These are my color collections that you'll see under color lookup. The rest of these are Fandex of your competitors. And so, I want to make sure I have those, but I really want to organize these in the way that best suits my paint counter. So, if I do a lot of kills, I can move that right up ahead of something else that's not that sold as much. And so that's color collections. Paint lines, same thing. I can now organize these in the fashion that I want and in the order that I want. Great stuff here. The last one, products. So ACE, back in 13, 14, when they did the reinvent, they made sure to keep your old 320, 330 bases because they wanted you to use them up. Well, in the last 5 years, you probably used them up. And so I don't need to have new bases, old bases appear on screen. The old bases are gone. Therefore, I can deselect what I don't carry. I don't carry the Essence line. Why do I need to even have that as a button? So this is really nice stuff when you have someone that takes the time, be able to pull products that you don't carry anymore. So when it comes time for me to do a color lookup and I select a Clark & Kensington color, and I select Abracadabra, there's my Clark & Kensington palette, okay, eggshell. Notice I don't have the old bases there. It's just the new, because that's all I carry. Boom, there's my formula book. I go then and save, dispense. Here's my 4 dispensers. I click on one of them and off I go, okay. So great stuff, the software. One last feature I'll talk about real quick is underneath configuration. Here's what you have on your system. There's your CBO number, okay? And if you've ever been with us or had to call in, you know that you needed your CBO number. This tells us exactly what Fandex you have, databases, formula books are on your system. Okay, so call us, get that number there. It's found here underneath the settings. We also have what's called an update now. So we can automatically update your system without you having to go out, get an email from us. How do I get that email onto the system? Because this doesn't have, well, you have to have internet to update it, so I shouldn't say that. But
at that computer.
Yeah, if you have a live internet, we can then simply go over here and click on Update Now. And what it does is it looks at the CBO number, and of course it's trying to jump out. Hold on. Second, I'm going to be able to show, yeah. It's going out there looking at what that CBO, is there anything that needs to be updated? In this case here, it needs to update the screensaver and logo. But there's no formula books, databases, or Fandex that need updating. So, but this is an awesome feature that I'm not gonna open up right now. But very nice in the way that it allows us to go out and see, or you to go out and update your system. So over the old days, we probably did updates twice a year through the paint companies, and then you had to go and figure out a way to make it happen, calling us and all of that. Now with this automatic updates, I typically suggest set it to never, and then if you talk to your paint company, hey, there's an update out there, go in and click on Update Now. Or if you want, if you go to the bottom screen under the settings, you can click on About, and that shows the screen of your CVO number and that. And then here's the update databases. So it would do the same thing that we did when we were inside the settings. So a couple ways to get there. But this is the new Color Designer Plus. Those are some of the bigger features that certainly are hopefully making your job easier to be able to match paint. Any other questions or poll questions we want?
Polar.
Let me talk about, good question. What about Benjamin Moore? Okay, with the MetaVue, over the last year, Benjamin Moore has not connected with the MetaVue, but they're now working on it. It should be done the end of the first quarter, if not sooner. So you're looking at March, less than a month away. This instrument now will connect with the Benjamin Moore software. And let me see if if I utilize fire up their software, it will connect with it. Again, big steps. They've, because of the imaging in that, they've got to make sure that's there because we know how important it is. So we are at X-Rite are really geeked to have that working with it. But certainly those of you that have it, we appreciate all the business that you've given us. Pricing on the instrument, I'll talk real quick about that. The MetaVue, what we can do is, let's say you have an iView, we can swap out your old instrument for the MetaVue, and the cost of that is $4,995. We'll rebate you back $500 once you send your instrument back in. So you're looking at then a cost of $44.95, and that will get you also, depending on your version of the software, we'll upgrade you to the version 3.6 automatically, and then that's just a drop, plug and play, and you're off and running. The full system, if it's a case where, boy, I've got old software and old instruments and everything else, that full system there is you're going to get a new computer, Windows 10, wireless capability, everything there. You're looking right around the $7,200, but that's with the full system, everything's loaded. But as the trade show season's coming forward, or is coming near us, come to the booth. Certainly, let's see, let's show you some more of the samples or some of these features. We are super geeked about it. I'm going to jump back into the PowerPoint here. Let's see here.
Okay, actually, while you're doing that, Tim, I got a question.
Okay.
I'm just going to kind of answer it. Why do the colors on the monitor do not always match the color that we just scanned? It's an interesting concept. Years and years ago, we actually did something. We tried to correct this. The monitors that we all use in the paint department are not fully super calibrated instruments or monitors. So it's a representation. You kind of think about it. You had a bad day and you turn the brightness down. That doesn't shift the color of the actual paint itself. It's just a representation. So yep, it's going to be a close one most of the time. It won't be perfect. I usually never recommend customers hold the sample up to the monitor thinking that's going to be great and perfect. What you want to do is kind of look at it like when he does the color, pulls out multiple colors. You have the light one, the dark one, the medium one. You're shooting for usually the color one. That is the most, that has the most representation in that chip sample. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. The other one, it looks like we had somebody from an industrial kind of company sneak in. One of the questions, and I'll let Tim answer this one. What about measuring something like ketchup or powder? Best answer I'd use for that is we can do it. Obviously, you want to control it. I would not just squirt ketchup out on your countertop and set the instrument on it. But you can use something like a cap and stuff like that. There's obviously, we do have some rigs and jigs for stuff like that, but the best thing is obviously keeping it uniform and flat. Imagine if you had a powder, you put it into a melt cap, nice and flat, and center it over it. I mean, 2 years ago, I would have laughed if somebody would have tried to measure that blue sponge or the countertop Tim had. There's no way we would ever got it. So people are experimenting with this instrument and coming out with great results. This instrument is also in industrial, so they use it measuring orange juices and stuff like that. So, like I said, I think the sky is the limit on this. Try those different things. One thing, Tim, if you want to show them with that, is the color navigator. So you do measure something you're not 100% sure. We have a cool feature built right into it.
So let's say the customer brings in that little balloon fabric that I have. I click on measure sample. Okay, they want that purple. Or let's say the teal. What colors go with that teal? Because now, we've always said, let's help you sell more paint. That's what we're trying to do. And if I can get you great color matches, that's great. They buy a gallon of paint, they go home and spend the weekend painting. But what about someone coming to the paint counter or to the chip rack, and they're just standing there looking? When you walk up and you say, hey, can I help you? And of course, they'll say, no, I'm just looking. And that's because color in itself is a very personal thing. They don't want to say, hey, help me, Tim. Show me colors that match with this. I'm not Martha Stewart. I probably, maybe I have an interior design. You don't know that, but you're going to be very fearful of asking. But what we can do is, hey, let me find some colors that match. And I can click on that. Did I go to color match? Hold on, color navigator. I can bring that sample in, go to color navigator and say, yeah, let's find something that goes with that teal or with that yellow. So I can place it underneath there. The instrument is just going to go out and separate color for us. And so I'll select the teal. And now what it's going to do is it goes out to the chip rack and it finds the colors that go with it. And so we've got safe accent colors, statement, bold. These are colors that I could click on that. Let's say, or I go back here. Let's click on the blown glass. And you'll notice it went right to the formula book, okay? Meaning if that's what let's do that. Give me a gallon of that. It goes right to the formula book. I then can click on it, walk through, and get that formula book color for it. So again, a way for us to help you sell more paint. The old days was, what about, if I wanted to, do something with editing, nice little feature there. I want to make this a little bit darker because they're going to do their base, their floor base a little darker. So I click on 10%. I click on darker to adjust it coloristically rather than, I'll just add some black. Well, black will make things darker. Don't get me wrong, but it makes things bluer. So, these are all these features inside that, again, are there to help you sell more paint. So don't be afraid to ask and try to, ask them what their project is, because it might just be a gallon of paint, but, in their mind, they're like, I gotta then think about, the hallway, and you know how the process goes. It's never ending circle of color that needs to happen. So I'm going to jump back over to our PowerPoint. Yes. No. All right. Hold on. See, I can get the camera to work all day.
We do have one last poll question.
Okay.
We do want to ask.
So last question. Are you in the future looking at upgrading your color designer or your instrument? For us, it's kind of nice that, we've got basically a business unit of 20,000 customers, and certainly we appreciate all of that. But it's also good to know if you're looking at, if your color designer is the old version, you know, hey, I bought an instrument 2 years ago or 3 years ago, my software is old. You know, that's the kind of stuff that'll help us out. But what this does is, at the end here is, you know, how to contact us. Jason and myself, you know, we live in the world of the 800-572-4626. And there's both of us, which are second level. We have also 4 first level, which look at just color match or retail. And if you call the option, that 800 number, option 3, option 5, you may get any of the 6 of us to help with that. If your question is, well, I don't know if I have the database or if I'm up to date with my software because I don't have a way to go out and update automatically, so you need to call us. We'll get your CBO number, hit option 1, and then you'll hit our customer service, and they'll be able to look up your CBO and tell you whether you're up to date or not. Another great option for Jason and I is the email down below where it says mrsupport@xrite.com. You know, while Jason and I are on the phone, we also manage this email account. And so if you have questions on anything pertaining to the instruments, color designer, why doesn't this work, or can you give me a call at some point, that's a great way to communicate with us. And then the same thing with the retail software orders. You know, that's the option 1 up top. Email them and say, hey, here's my CBO number, my store name, number, contact. Do I need an update? Those things can simply be answered right off of email. And again, a quick, fast way to get responses if we're not, if you're trying to call us and you're not getting through for some reason, which shouldn't be happening, but we know it happens. So these are the kind of things. Give us a call. There's the sales number. We certainly, you can call us. As the shows are coming up, there's lots of specials that are out there. And certainly call us to find out what those specials are. We'll be at all the big shows. Come see us, any one of us. Jason and I will both be at shows. We certainly appreciate your business. If there's anything we can do, let us know. But is there any other questions, guys?
It looks like there are no more questions.
Okay.
So with that, that'll conclude this webinar. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Again, you will receive an email with this recording so you can watch it at your convenience.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.